Well, that's a snippet of how the political parties are building up to the 2023 elections. Well, the full picture is out there for everybody. Months ago, how they have been conducting their affairs. And this morning, we have a three-man panel to dissect the issues, how they concern you as a citizen and how that will impact on governance, leadership question in Nigeria. So let's introduce our guests this morning. I'll begin with Professor Michael Oni, who's of the Department of Political Science and Public Administration, Babcock University. He joins us virtually this morning. And joining us from our Abuja studio is Chief Peter Ame, who is a former chairman, Progressive People's Alliance, the former chairman, Inter-Party Advisory Council, a former PPA presidential candidate 2019. And right next to him is Mr. Ezewan Wago, who is a chairman, Partners for Electoral Reform, as convener, Say No Campaign Nigeria. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program. Let me begin with Professor Oni. There are lots of concerns about how the political parties are conducting their internal leadership recruitment process, how they're building up to whether it's going to be consensus or whatever, but to select the candidate. And this is very important because it's whoever the parties select that the people can then elect at the general elections come 2023. So this is very, very important point. But I'd like to know from you, from your point of view, seeing how the parties have conducted themselves, are you equally concerned about that question about the way they're conducting their internal leadership recruitment process?
Yeah, thank you. I want to say that every federation and every nation has peculiarities in addressing some of their fundamental problems. And Nigeria is not an exception. If you look at the Nigerian Federation, we call nothing but rotation, zoning and rotation will be the best. That is on the first hand. On the second hand, the consensus arrangement, it may be okay, because if you look at Section 84, subsection 9 and 10, it has made it difficult for opposition on ordinary day. But if you want to go on consensus, whereby party will bring out somebody to contest for an election, Section 9 and 10 will make it difficult for an opposition because there must be a written and sign agreement that I have surrendered my will to a particular aspirant to represent us at an election. That would be okay for Nigeria. And there are two options. So the options of direct, the option of indirect, the two are okay. The three are okay. Whichever the political party has decided to adopt, it can be okay. At least in Osun, they adopted direct, and it worked. So if it is adopted, in APC just concluded primary, they adopted indirect, it worked. So I think any of the three options in Section 84 are good to go.
When you say it worked, I'd like to just take a look at, look down memory lane, at least in this Fourth Republic that we're in, and ask you, do you think because we've tinkered with different options, and you've talked about some of them, using those modes, those different options and all of that, would you say that the political parties in Nigeria have used those modes to throw up the right candidates, the best of the best for Nigerians to then elect the elections?
It depends. Your concept of the best, it depends on the operations that has to be performed on who is the best. But the party leaders know who among them will deliver. And if they have decided to zero in on one of them and all others consented in writing, I think any arrangement, embarked on by any party and it work for it is the best. And
okay.
In their collective wisdom, they must have expected to take a wise decision.
All right, so let me take this to Abuja and begin with Chief Ame. You are very well aware of the internal workings of political parties in Nigeria. And, it's one thing to select candidates, but it's another thing to select a candidate, the best for the people to then elect at the elections. But give us an inside view, because not all Nigerians belong to political parties anyway. What are the factors considered in deciding who is best to, fly the party's flag and then, of course, represent the party at the elections? This is for Chief Ahmed, by the way.
Normally, okay. Normally, we are supposed to look at it from the view of, competence, party membership, somebody that has participated in the process, somebody who is a card-carrying member of the party, who has contributed to the growth of the party, who has supported the party in all ways and remain loyal to the party and committed. But the Nigerian system has been bastardized, and there's a strongman approach everywhere. When you have a party that has a sitting governor, you have an issue on how you can have ordinary members of the party to emerge at the primaries of political party, because these governors tie their hands, and tie rope to their hands to their delegate and walk into the primaries of the party and the congresses. So it has become a problem. What you see in the open is not actually what happened behind the scene, because for us to really develop the process, we must be able to develop a process where delegates are free, members of the parties are free to participate in the process, and then have a very credible election. He talked about Oshun. As I've talked to you now, Lasun Yusuf is in Labour Party. He claimed that there was no primary election in his constituency. So if you look at what they are doing, when you talk about direct, indirect, and consensus candidate, we looked at the last convention and how young youth, somebody who was contesting for youth leader was asked to step down by all means. Somebody who was contesting for another position was asked to step down. The stronger man approach is actually affecting how free and fair elections are conducted. Because why do we tell people, go and populate the political party, go and be members of the political party? Because at the end of the day, the strong man will determine what will be on the ballot. And what you vote for will be a byproduct of the primaries of the political party, which will not be even the best of all among the best of Nigerians. So if you want to talk about direct primaries, you talk about indirect primaries. Indirect primaries has its own issue. And that's why you find out that everything has a purpose and benefit. After the former governors have all moved to the National Assembly, they discovered what they were operating in their state, the strongman approach they were operating in their state, by making sure that the will and interest of the people does not count, is no longer sustainable for them, because they are at the receiving end. That's why they were looking at how to now bring what they call direct primaries into the process, where all members of the party determine who becomes a flag bearer or who represent the party at the national level, in the executive and state levels.
So just to be clear,
but because the delegate system is so corrupt, is so bastardized by those who are in authority, that you cannot even depend on the delegate. Because when they get to the primary, you discover that every governor has lodged their delegate in the hotel room. They are determining what they're going to vote tomorrow. Each state will vote for the state that the governor has determined for them to vote. Those states that don't have governors, who have more stronger men which is not governor, maybe probably a senator that is leading the party, will determine what the delegate will vote. And
okay, just to be clear, you're saying that... pardon me. Okay, go ahead. You can land on that point.
The happenings in convention that we have seen, that if we must have a credible process for internal workings of political party, I'm very happy with the guidelines that INEC brought recently. One of the public notice that INEC issued to political parties, saying that every candidate must emerge from a credible and fair primary conducted by the party. If not, they will not be on the ballot. So with this kind of determination from the electoral umpire, and maybe civil society who are also like a watchdog to see how these things are conducted, I think the party process may get a better deal for the party primaries coming in at the end of June.
Okay, we'll come to the civil society soon, but just to be clear, you're saying from your experience, it is not about competence, it is not about the ideas or capability, it is about who has the backing of the strong man or strong men within a party. You're saying that that is a main factor that decides who emerges as a flag bearer of parties. Am I right?
Oh, that is point blank truth. And the reason why we're asking we want the reform that have been fought for by political party, electoral umpire, and the civil society, where electorate is now becoming the determining factor, who represent us either at the National Assembly, State Assembly, local government, and at the presidential level, is because at the end of the day, we want a free, a fair and credible election to be able to allow multi-party democratic process to grow. Because as we speak, sincerely, not parties that are not in government, parties that don't have strong men. And there are a lot of them who are not in government, who are willing to conduct free and fair primaries. But I tell you, for parties that have so much government presence, there have never been an opportunity for people to have, how they call it, to have their majority to have their say, and the majority to have their way, and the minority to have their say. But in this case, it's the minority having their way, why the majority will not even have a say. So that is the situation we find at. If you go really and speak to people privately, those who contested for the national chairman of the APC, you see that some people have been brutalized. Some people
just one quick question, Mr. Mayor,
no process to allow them to participate in the process.
Yeah, just a quick question on something that you mentioned now about the smaller parties. Pardon the use of that word. You said that sometimes that, they are able to conduct free and fair elections, with intra-party elections and all of that. Isn't it a little concerning that many Nigerians don't even know that these parties exist until the build-up to the election, such as now? Isn't that a little concerning? They give the people far less options than the ones that are prominent.
They don't give the people far less option. The Constitution was on point when it made multi-party democracy the option for Nigeria. And the people have also blindfolded their eyes to, like a stereotype thing, to just focus on two apples when there are other ripe fruit on the tree.
That's the thing, Mr. Mayor.
Look at what is
just a second.
Thank you for
That's the thing.
me. Pardon.
Just 1 second. That is the issue. People don't know these other parties. They are not obvious until during the elections. It's only the ones that we hear, the PDP, the APC, that people know about. And this is not the first time. I mean, APC didn't just come up. APC didn't exist since 1999. APC didn't come up until, what, maybe about 6, 7, 8 years ago. And this is where we are now. So if those other parties had been as prominent, as forthright as they ought to be, top-of-mind awareness wouldn't be a problem for the people.
I want you to understand that there's this issue that things that when you belong to these other parties, there's no bigger party, there's no smaller party. If you go to read the Constitution very well, the people believe that when they are in this party, there will be a forceful way for them to get elected. Our electoral process has improved from ballot stuffing, from ballot snatching, and all the strongman manipulations that happened in our elections. And that's why a lot of people were happy for the transmission of results of elections. Let me tell you, I can give you histories of election. There are parties that are not APC and PDP that have been winning elections since 1999. But the defection, how they call it, that occurs within the political space, have never allowed these parties to grow. In 2019, Action Alliance won the election in Imo, 8 House of Assembly members and 3 House of Reps. Within 3 weeks, they defected to the APC. I can give you the one of NNPP in Bauchi. I can give you the one of other ADC. These are the issues that we need to concentrate on. The other parties are doing a lot of things to make sure that the electoral process are transparent, that the electoral process represent the true wishes of the people and accommodate the wishes of those
the question
who want to
then, Mr. Mayor, that you want to ask, just a second. The question then you want to ask is, why is that happening? But don't answer that yet. Let's bring in Mr. Nwangu on this conversation. Well, we're talking about 2023 and matters arising, and the issues are arising already. Zoning is becoming more prominent than ever. Consensus is becoming more prominent than ever. Some of these political parties have some of these issues outlined specifically in their constitution. The PDP is clear about its own zoning arrangement. The APC has almost always used consensus for most of its own options, but it would seem like these are the very issues that are becoming a little more contentious these days, Mr. Nwagu. So where do we go from here? At the end of the day, by the time the electorate are ready to vote in 2023, it's almost too late in the day. They have the options that they have, whether they like it or not. That's all they have to. That's all they have to choose. Where do we go from here?
We will go to the point where we concentrate and work around how we continue to expand this democratic space. The politicians currently are in the struggle for, if you pardon my use of that word, dubious advantage. And they do that in whatever manner that is prescribed, whether it's direct, indirect. At every point in time, if you watch the conversation, you see people constantly hoeing to their side, always ensuring that whatever is in the conversation gives advantage to them. So for some of us is to say these processes that you are introducing, whether in your political party or at the outer society, how does it expand this democratic space? The struggle for democracy was not cheap. It was procured on the blood, the toil, the moil of citizens who were on the streets of Nigeria banging their foots on the ground to get the military out. So when we have this democracy, we don't want people who use different methods. And one of the defining challenges that we have was that when we returned to democracy in 1999, we handed power over to people who have commandist thinking and structure. The idea of contest and competition was not something that they like. And those who took over from them have consolidated that. So at every point in time, you want to see we gave him power, not that he contested for power. So you have a political elite that is constantly walking away from the idea of contest and competition. And whether at the state level or at the subnational level or at the national level, you are seeing more and more people being ostracized. So when my brother talks about free, fair, credible election, we also need to begin to talk about inclusive. How inclusive is this processes? How does it deal with the issue of women? How does it deal with the issue of vulnerable groups? How does it deal with the issue of young people who and the kind of things that you are putting in place? Does it accommodate these groups? Does it include them? So if it does not, then there is a challenge. So let's talk about that, the processes of the APC.
Right. Mr. Nwagu, pardon me. Let's talk about making it inclusive. We'll talk about, specifics. I mean, looking at those parties and how they have conducted themselves. But I don't want that point to be missing. How to make it more inclusive for the people, youth, women, and all other, sections, as it were. You've talked about political elite. For our other guest in Abuja, he talked about strong men deciding who gets power. Essentially, power was given to you, not that you contested for it. So clearly, there's a disconnect between what happens within the political parties, how the leaders or the flag bearers emerge, and what the people want. Because the people are not strong people, as it were. Even though numerically they should be the strong ones, but in this whole conversation, they're not the strongest, it will seem. So how do we link that disconnect? How do we ensure that even right within the political parties, there's inclusion for all?
If you follow the trend, there are obstacles that are infused into the political process that makes it difficult for it to be inclusive. If you say consensus, for instance, who are in the decision-making process to determine this consensus? In many places, it could be the elders of the party, so-called elders of the party. And how did they become elders? Because they have over a period of time, they have had their hand in the public till, they have built capacity strength over a period of time by their closeness to patronage and cronyism. And so, if that becomes a pattern that you criminalize even my aspiration, I can't wake up and say I want to contest, because at the end of the day, it's some set of select party leaders who will then decide eventually who, and the criteria for that decision, as you know, may not necessarily be objective. It could be based on different kinds of things. Who is your father? How did you come? Who is sponsoring you? Where are you coming from? All of those issues become one thing that then the cost itself, the cost within these dominant political parties, the cost of expression of interest form, and all of those processes that they put in place are also limiting factors for inclusiveness. You also can think about the fact that in the states, for instance, in the dominant political parties, you have a situation in which you can't even find the form to buy, because the czars, the emperors in the states, just go to the secretariat, collect all the forms, and then bring it to their states and hand over to whoever they want. There are no, we focus too much on the national, but at the congresses that were taking place where party officials emerged earlier in the year, you will find out that there were lists. This unity, this so-called unity list that you have seen that has become a culture, was drawn from that background. So people don't even say, I want to be at that local level where you teach politics. People can't even express that interest. So inclusiveness has to deal with issue of cost. It has to deal with the issue of capacity and contest. Can I contest? And
but Mr. Nwagu,
in the new parties, I don't like to call them smaller parties. In the newer parties, you have the tendency for those who founded those parties to appropriate and become the strong man of their own party.
Exactly.
In
So
the 2019 election,
that,
all the new parties who came out, eventually the founders became the presidential candidates of those parties.
okay, well, does that make the people helpless? Because at the end of the day, it's about the people. So in which way can we strengthen the structures of our political apparatus, like the political parties, the political umpires, political education, that will make people say, this is the way this ought to go, and this is the way we are going to have to address this? Does this make the people helpless in or out of the parties?
No, they are not helpless. It's even if they are helpless, they are willingly helpless. Let's take and I'm happy that I'm in the panel with my brother Chifame. Who are the members of these political parties? Where is the nominal role of the political parties? Who is paying dues? If you had a convention in Abuja, 90% of the people who came to the convention were accommodated, transported, fed by these so-called strongmen. At the end of the day, it's your decision to be a stakeholder. What makes you a stakeholder in the political party is your ability to ensure that you pay membership dues. You contribute to the party at whatever level, even if it is small. That's the small contribution you have made have given you stakeholdership within that party, and then you can make a claim. But many times we willingly sit back and get carried. We are coming for a Congress. The party card, even party cards are cornered by some people. And if you register in the political party, they say, go to this person's house to go and collect the party card.
Well,
So
Mr. Nwagu, it's interesting.
To resist those things.
Yeah, it's interesting that you raise the angle of, political membership of political parties by being a financial member, and it's something that has been practiced before. I wish we could get there again. But let me ask Prof. Take a look back, Prof, about where we are coming from. You're a professor of political science and public administration, so I'm very sure you have a fair idea of where we are coming from, especially in our democratic practices over the years. there's a question we asked earlier in the week. At what point would you say we had a fair game politically in this country that we say, okay, we really did well at this time? Maybe we could upgrade or update some of the systems, some of the information we had at the time that helped us to work, that helped the zones to compete favorably with each other, competitive, healthy competition among each other. And we got it right at the time. We've tried two systems. Now we are where we are, and there's a lot of complaining. At what time in our history would you say politically we got it right? And maybe if we updated our books, we could use this again to get the kind of development that we want for our country?
Thank you. I will tell you categorically that we have not been able to get it right at any time, because most of the politicians are deceitful. They are not facing the facts. What we need in Nigerian politics for fairness, justice, and equity is balance and equitable zoning and rotational arrangement. That one will make us to get there. What do I mean by balance and cross-tabulated zoning? We have 6 geopolitical zones created some time ago. Look at 2 of the zones. They have never presented a candidate for presidential. Their candidates have never won presidential election. Look at Southeast. They have been consistently excluded for reasons best known to those that are concerned. Northeast. The power has been circulating between the Southwest and the Northwest, and punctuated by South-South. How do we get it right when all the zones don't have equal access to power? Therefore, I want to tell you that for Nigeria to get it right, I've said this several times, and I'm happy for this opportunity. Let us cross-tabulate rotation. This zoning, they are going around, they are doing this. It will be just Nigeria is not a state where you can pass majoritarian democracy. A section will continue to dominate because of the structural problem and demographic lopsidedness. Let the Northeast cross-balance with Southeast. One as president, one as vice president. Let the Northwest cross-balance. When they finish their own, one single term, I want to advocate here. One single term is okay. Whatever wonder you want to execute, 6 years is okay. It's because of the time lag, 4 years in first instance, 2 years in second instance. That's 8 years. Why can't we do it 6 years between the 2 zones and they go away? The second one is Northwest cross-balance with Southwest. 6 years, they go away. Then North Central cross-balance with South-South. 6 years, they go away. Within a tinkle of 30 years, we are done. You will ask me, how will it be done? Thank God, zones are there. Let the leaders arrange who we emerge among them. At that point in 1999, when Olufalaye and President Olusegun Obasanjo were fished out by the zone where the power was directed to present candidate. Talking of competence, what do you mean by competence? Are we going to say that Obasanjo and Falaye are not competent enough? Are we saying that when it's come to South-South, are you saying they will not be able to get us 1 or 2 people that will be competent? Are we saying if it comes to the turn of the Northeast, they won't get competent? I am saying we have not got it right at any time, except we look at this proposal. Then 2-party system, we thank God is evolving. 2-party
Prof,
system is
I hate to cut in now. But we're due for a break. Yes, you're making that point about the two-party system, but we need to take a break now. And when we return, we'll let you land on that. It's quite interesting you say that. I mean, those candidates were competent, but you also said we've never gotten it right. So we'll delve into that deeper in a moment, so please stay with us. You're welcome back. Well, Prof, you were talking about the two-party system earlier on and how we should cross-tabulate, I imagine, zone. But you also said earlier on that, I mean, we've had competent candidates, even though you also said that we have never gotten it right. So even though the candidates were competent, right? So what is the assurance that when we cross-tabulate, get a competent candidate, that we will get it right? Perhaps the problem is even deeper than the mode or the way we are approaching the selection of our candidates, because if we've never gotten it right with competent candidates, clearly something is wrong.
You know, the major problem we have in Nigeria is distrust and mistrust among the political elite, because they don't know how power rotates. They don't have confidence in the system. But what I'm saying is that when you are aware that it will be the turn of Northeast, it will be the turn of Northwest, they will have been grooming people preparatory to their turn. What we lack here is that you see what is happening now. Somebody has spent 8 years, and these people from from that zone are moving around and passing for another term. Do you think other people will have confidence? Let there be confidence that it will come to our turn. It will come to our turn. I had advocated that for Nigerian politics to move on, we need two-party system. And I was advocating for institutionalization at that time. But it naturally emerged, and thank those who really made it work. APC is on its toe now because of the PDP. But if it were to be fragmented parties, they know they do it, and we will spend 100 years, we will spend 50 years. I think no party can say it again in Nigeria because of the involvement of the two-party system. But if we cross-tabulate 5 years, 6 years, do your miracle, go away, there's no federation that does not have its own peculiar arrangement to resolve its own problem. That's what I'm trying to say. Nigeria, majoritarian democracy can never work. Look at the structure. It's not preferable to a section. Look at the demographics.
Understand that.
It's not preferable to a section.
Prof, I understand that point.
We should imbibe majoritarian democracy without being colored. I am telling you, we need to go to markets, buy a plot, sow it in a way that will suit our democracy. If you look at section 14 of the Nigerian Constitution, it talks about democracy, federal character principle, because some people are saying there's no zoning in the Constitution. If you look at section 14, subsection 3 and 4, you will see that zoning is implicitly stated there.
Okay, Prof, I'd like you to speak to this point. I understand that so far, but I'd like you to speak to the point, the question I asked. So we keep getting the right or the competent candidates, according to you, but still you say that we have not gotten that governance question right. And you talk about ever since we began as a nation. So, yes, we can talk about how we need to zone and all of that, but when we throw up the competent candidates and they don't perform well, I'd like you to address that. Why is it that we have competent candidates, but we've not gotten governance right?
Nigerian politics has been costly in the last 20-something years. I was growing up during the days of Abu, when our brothers, mothers at home will contribute this 10 kobo, pull it together, send it to campaign. But today, politics is costly. And when you are being drained before you get into power, politics is about interest articulation, conflict and conflict management. If you get into power when you are being drained, you have to recoup your expenses. So how do we get it right? A PhD student of mine is working on sovereign loan and infrastructural development. He has submitted, waiting for a presentation. From his findings, there are gaps between the level of the borrowing and the level of development, because somebody who lodged somebody in an hotel to get power, do you think he will not recoup that money from the state? So we are not getting it correctly. Let us demonetize the polity. If we demonetize the polity, people are the problem. I go home every election year, I'm not sure I will go this year. You will see people asking for money. You will see people voting, showing their ballot paper like this, and they give them a paper. You will see people stay somewhere, illegally registering people that will vote for them. After voting, they cross-tabulate the number of votes they have with the number of then they double it with the other people. We are not getting it right in the recent time because our politics has been demonetized. What stopped me from going to politics?
You said something a little while ago. My apologies, Prof.
Yeah.
When you said you go home to vote,
yes.
Why is that? There are those who wonder, shouldn't we all be voting where we reside?
That I go home to vote is my political rights. I have voted for candidate at an election and vote for another candidate at an election. As a political scientist, I am a practical political scientist. I'm not a theorist. I match theory with practice. How will I sit down at home on the day of the election and be reading newspaper? That is one of the problems we have here. The elite will sit down, watching sunrise, watching channels on the day of. Why can't you go out, go and make a difference? If you don't make it, accept it as part of the system. I'm saying I may not go this year because it appears I'm fading up. I'm not getting my...
I think that's the point my colleague was trying to make about, reviewing this whole having to go all the way, travel all the way to vote, when in fact you can always vote around you, because it's the case for a lot of people. They registered at their hometown and all of that.
There are myriad of problems. So
exactly.
If you vote electorally in Nigeria, my dear friend, it will be manipulated along the line. I am telling you.
No. So not voting electronically, definitely. Voting around where you stay. But that's another conversation, really. But I'm also quite curious.
My plan later in life. Can you get it? After
I didn't get
retiring from this place, you may not know my plan.
Oh, okay, of course.
I'm part of the politics in my community now.
Because politics is local, after all.
If you ask me, or ask my children later, your father is not associated with this community. Community is not with party, with the community. So if you mention my name in my town now, they know me. If any of my children is interested, even after I must have departed, nobody can say they don't know Biojuni in South where I came from. You try to make difference.
Absolutely, and I think that point has been made about how it's important to be involved in your local community, whether as a politician and all. But let me take this to our guests in Abuja. You've provided some insight, as to the issues at stake here. And let me begin with Chief Ame. There's a lot of talk about new political parties, because I think using small can be a bit offensive these days. But you understand why, because in terms of numbers, the APC will tell you they have 40 million registered members, the PDP will tell you they have millions, and you hear this, the new political parties, can't exactly boast of that much membership. I may be wrong anyway, but let me just even ask you that, Chief Ame. What will be the numerical strength of the smaller political parties, in quotes?
First of all, let me be able to say that I don't agree with the prof about two-party system. As an unapologetic advocate for inclusivity, for multi-party democracy, for the promotion of people's right to participation. Because issues of political participation are a little bit very complex if you have not really been on the field. If you go to the field, you find out that multi-party democracy have created opportunity and given voice to a lot of young people, are giving people the opportunity to be able to be part of the system, and putting away from those other two major parties that are, entrenched themselves with public fund. Let me tell you the reason why the other young parties are not growing organically. There are a lot of other issues. The local government election is the greatest electoral fraud that has been fostered on our democratic space. And then you talk about issue of visibilities. Issue of visibility come as the fact that people who are parties who are already in government, either in the state or the national level, perpetuate themselves in power by taking public funds to do promotion, to pay for dedicated coverage, to pay for mobility for the electorate, to pay for mobility for party members, and this cost is borne by the state indirectly. It's just that when you now look at the young and upcoming organic growing political party who have no access to public fund, they have this difficulty to carry out some of these functions. And that's why the only place I agree with Prof is that when during the Awolowo's time, the Nigerian system, the Nigerian electorate understand the process, the need to contribute to polls, to be able to vote for the credible, competent, and integrity-driven, aspirants. If in those days, I had a story that in my own community, in Google. People put money in basket in market, to even sponsor a brilliant child to go to the university.
But isn't that the job, Mr. Ahmed, just very quickly, because we're winding down now, isn't that the job of the political parties, to market themselves to the people to the point that the people themselves... No, it's the job of the political parties. It's not the government that is going to market the political party. It wasn't the government that marketed the UPN to the people to be voting for them. It wasn't the government that marketed the action group for the people to be making the contributions. So isn't it the job of the political parties to sell themselves to the people to the point that the people can then donate to the parties?
One of the things that you must take home today is that the media must give access, equal and how they call it, visibility to all parties. They must be able to put the issues all the time on the front burner, how it affects this party, what are the challenges they are having, and I'll give them space to be able to hear their voice in appearing in promoting issues of multi-party democracy for these other parties is on a very expensive scale. And that's why I'm telling you, they are doing a lot in their community. I'm telling you, I don't want to start mentioning parties that I know have done so much to be able to promote their party, to keep it going. Today you can see NNPP.
It would also be the responsibility of the political parties.
And their name on the line.
It will also be the responsibility of the political parties to make themselves available whenever they are called upon, just as you have made yourself available today. Lastly, let me speak with Mr. Nwagu about this one. And that is the fact that ultimately it's about the people. Ultimately, it is about the people. Inclusivity, electoral practice, and all those things, ultimately it is about the people. And you know that over the years, voter participation, voter engagement has been on the decrease. How do we change that narrative?
Okay, I look to 2023 and beyond, where the citizens will be at the center stage of the conversation. And the only way that can happen is by the citizens themselves setting the agenda. We have for too long allowed politicians to drive the narrative for engagement. The call has been on professional groups, citizen groups and organizations to begin to take the window of the long period of campaigns to now begin to be the ones organizing town halls. And those town halls can come with what we have called a citizen charter of demand. We want to see Nigerian Union of Teachers articulating, documenting the state of primary education in the country. We want to see the Nigerian Medical Association articulating, documenting the state of public health in the country. We want to see Nigerian Society of Engineers telling us about the housing deficits and and then inviting politicians to come have a conversation and not being invited. We want to see a situation in which there are less award-giving organizations in this political period. We want to see more churches not doing launchings of church buildings and mosques and the rest of them, but inviting these politicians to come and have an engagement, and so that we can have something to track. At the end of the day, when we have these razzmatazz of campaigns where we bring comedians and musicians to sing and dance, at the end of the day, we have nothing to track. Let us have a more civic, a more serene and pristine environment in which we can engage and document and then have something we can hold people accountable for.
Well, these days you see
basically
campaigns.
Also the political...
Okay, just 10 seconds on that.
Yes, the political parties are running away from what made the UPN and Action Group tick. What made them tick was that they had members. They had people who you could call members of their political parties. They had ideological school. The AG had an ideological school where they produced cadres. Today, you don't know who is a member of a political party because you can be PPA in the morning and then APC in the night. And then
Mr. Nwagu, we have to run now.
Makes it difficult for us to have.
It would seem as though you were throwing a shade at Chief Ahmed, who's PPA. I mean, he's been a part of the PDP presidential campaign organization at some point. point. He's also, I think, supporting a candidate this time around. But maybe we'll have this conversation another day. But I'd like to thank you so much, Mr. Ezenwa Wagu, Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reform. He's also convener, Say No campaign. Right next to him, with a smile on his face, is Chief Peter Ame, who's former chairman, Progressive People's Alliance, is former chairman, IPAC, and former PPA presidential candidate 2019. We've also had the pleasure of Professor Michael Oni of the Department of Political Science and Public Administration at Babcock University. Prof, thank you so much for your time. And gentlemen, we appreciate you.